If you were alive in the early 2000s and early 2010s, you'll know that there was an explosion of zombie media, games, and comics. With The Walking Dead, COD Zombies, DayZ, The Walking Dead comics, Left 4 Dead, Dead Rising, Killing Floor, and a game called I Made a Game with Zombies in it, which most of you probably don't know, but for me that was a fundamental part of my childhood. There was zombie backpacks, zombie socks, zombie shirts, zombie hats. There was everything that was zombies. Now, all of these media are remembered very fondly and they're close to my heart. For example, I loved COD Zombies, but they're talked about as if they're in the past and we remember them by their primes and not the current state they're in. Black Ops 3 Zombies was the prime for me. Arma 2 DayZ for me was way better than DayZ as it is now as a standalone game. Left 4 Dead 2 simply because they just never really made another one, and Back 4 Blood is a sorry fucking excuse for one of those games. Walking Dead Telltale games, whenever Lee was kind of the main protagonist and they didn't have to bring him back. And also not Destinies. I don't know who in the hell made Walking Dead Destinies, but find another career. Cool. But there's one game that I played that is consistently being updated, is arguably still in its prime, and took me away from my family for a copious amount of time. That game was Project Zomboid. Now, the main aspect of a lot of zombie games is to make you feel really cool. And be like, oh, kill all these zombies. Oh my god, is that Chuck on a motorcycle with 2 chainsaws? And he's also pushing a teddy bear with two saws on each side? And it's the ray gun and the thunder gun. And while I love both of the games I just mentioned, that's what the main aspect is making you feel really cool and killing all these zombies to your heart's desire. I love COD Zombies very dearly. I've made a whole video about it, which it's not that great because I made it a couple of months ago whenever I was learning. Don't go watch it. But what these games don't really go over most of the time is the absolute human aspect of living through a zombie apocalypse and what that does to a person. And now I know that if you want to feel that actual fucking relief from getting away from a zombie horde and hiding in a house, or whenever you're walking and starving in the middle of the night in the woods, and you finally do find a house with food in it, feeling that immense amount of relief get lifted off of you, knowing that you're going to survive and overcoming these different challenges and going on a genuine journey with your character and getting attached to them, play this game. And today I wanted to go over my thoughts on the game and my overall experience with it, because I think that you should absolutely go play it. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. Now, when you first start your world, you're going to be greeted by this menu that looks like you're selecting a job on a Gmod RP server. And these are your occupations. And selecting your occupation or your job to start off with is really important depending on what you want to do. If you want to be like Bill from The Last of Us, which by the way, one of the best written episodes of TV of all time, choose engineer because they already come with a variety of blueprints and trappings and bombs. If you're trying to be sneaky and be able to hotwire cars and get a ride whenever you want, play burglar. If you're really focused on building your own base, you choose carpenter because they're good with woodworking and building walls and base defenses and lights and anything you need. You can choose any of these and play in any kind of style you want. There isn't one specific right way to play the game. And what did I choose, you may ask, while you're also clicking the subscribe and like button. And first of all, thank you. But second of all, I chose the fire officer. And the reason for that being is because they come fit, strong, and they have efficiency with an axe. And his name? Pizzazz Eustace. And knowing very little of the game, I didn't really have an idea of where I should be spawning, so I chose Maldra. And so did my friend. And this is where the story of Pizzazz Eustace and the legendary Sheepman 99 begins. Now, Sheepman chose a lumberjack. And seeing that we were both proficient with axes, we decided that it would be a smart idea to go to a sawmill so that we could acquire the axes that we're proficient with, and B, materials to start building a base, as I wanted to be a carpenter. So whenever I traveled through Maldra and finally found him, one thing became very prominent. This game makes sure that you are aware that you are a normal person. You are not a superhero. You're not really skilled in anything that is outside of your occupation. You need to use your advantages as best as you can. I found myself running away from hordes to hide in houses and trying to find anything I can use inside of the house, whether that be materials, backpacks, clothing with better defenses, weapons, anything that you can find, canned foods, can openers, or antidepressants, because you're gonna need them. If I was to go out there and just fight the hordes I saw, my survival chances are pretty goddamn low. So we snuck past most of the zombies, getting whatever gear we could find, and then walking down the street to the logging company, because your walking speed is faster than the zombies in this game. So that is one of the advantages you have, is once you're in the middle of the town, you can walk wherever. But don't get cornered inside of a building, and don't get cornered on the street. Now, whenever we got to the logging company, we found axes and all the materials we could ever really need to build a base there. There's so much wood that you don't really need to go anywhere else. Because I was already skilled with axes because I chose fire officer, I was immediately killing zombies much more effectively and efficiently in maybe 2 or 3 hits, sometimes 1, and felt much more confident to take on larger groups. And this is whenever I noticed that there is a very strong sense of progression whenever you do finally feel like you're able to take on some of those zombies and feel like you're making your way in this world. Whenever you start, you feel like you're pretty much useless. But whenever you start to get your ground and get that sense of progression, this game becomes so addicting. The zombies became much less scary, and they weren't like family members asking you a question at Thanksgiving. Hi, how are you? I haven't seen you in forever. How's school going? So we took our axes and our supplies, and Sheep Man said that he knew where a shack was north of here. Now, this should be common sense. I for some reason trusted him. Whenever someone says they kinda know where a shack is to the north of here, don't follow them aimlessly through the woods. Whenever I tell you that we walked 2 hours through the woods and farmland, that we ended up passing the shack and we're just trying to find a home. And while we were doing this, I was trying my absolute best to keep my moodles under control. And for those of you who don't know, moodles are essentially an indicator in the top right of your screen that lets you know how your character is doing. These can be things that are very mild, like peckish, slightly thirsty, or getting bored. And then there are very urgent ones, like severe injury, starving, and dying of thirst. And a lot of the more urgent moodles are just rather moodles that were more moderate that you didn't take care of. So if you don't eat, you'll go from peckish to starving. If you don't drink, you'll go from slightly thirsty to dying of thirst. If you don't take care of your injuries, you'll go from moderate injuries to severe injuries. Now, luckily, we brought a lot of food with us on this trip, and we ended up consuming all of it. We went through canned food, actual food, to the point where I was surviving off of a jar of mayonnaise, and Sheep Man was surviving off of a jar of ketchup. It felt like we were in Lord of the Rings, and we were Frodo and Sam going on that journey. At this point, we had easily walked 20 miles since starting, and when we were both hungry, thirsty, out of food, exhausted, we finally found a house. Like at the end of the first movie, whenever Frodo gets stabbed and he wakes up in Rivendell. It was probably the happiest I had been in months. Luckily, the house we found was huge in a rural area. And as I practiced carpenting, I started fortifying and putting defenses down. Now, after living here for a couple of days, we found that we were out of food and needed to go in town to supply run, and we found a truck that worked. And at this point, we had another group member with us, and his name was Jenkins. Now, I would compare Jenkins to Gollum in the story. You'll find out later on. I took him with me to the supply run. This was probably the most stressful that supply run could have ever been. I broke the truck down by hitting things, which is my fault. I admit that was my bad. Because if you're not used to it, the driving kind of feels like you're getting tased every 20 seconds whenever you take a turn. But whenever you do get used to it, it's really not that bad. And it took a second for me to orientate myself whenever I'm driving the truck, because it doesn't go off of your camera angle. It goes off as if you were actually in the truck. So if you're facing towards the camera and you hit D, your car will go left. However, we actually made it to the city we were trying to get to, which is Riverside. But we were miles away from home without a car that worked. So I scrambled and started supplying and looking for any kind of car that worked. And in this process, Jenkins died about 4 times.
Dead.
I just watched Kendon. Which, one of them was my fault because he was AFK and I left the door open. My fault. So in between scavenging and guarding his body, luckily Jenkins did find a working car and was able to start it, and we were able to put a lot of canned food in it and drive back home. However, whenever I was guarding his body, I killed probably around 100 zombies. So, naturally, my axe broke, because weapons in this game have durability, and they're not exactly easy to repair. I didn't happen to have the wood glue on me that was needed, so I just used what I could, and it broke. Whenever we got back home, Jenkins logged off, and Sheepman said, hey, we'll go back to the sawmill, get you another axe. Now, whenever we go back to the sawmill, I am used to having my axe on me at this point, so I think I'm invincible and I can take on any amount of zombies that I want. But I only have a crowbar, which I'm not proficient with. Seeing as I'm a new player, however, I still thought that because I had a one proficiency in long blunts that I could take on still at least 10 to 20 zombies. And this ended up happening after we traveled all the way back to Sawmill.
How many bags of concrete?
I'm dead.
You're dead? No.
Dude, I couldn't move, man.
Millboro.
Now, the clip speaks for itself. I was absolutely heartbroken whenever I died, and that's when I realized that I was immensely attached to my character. And I told all of that very fast for the sake of keeping this video short, but that entire life, my character lived a pretty long time considering it was my first actual attempt. And it felt like I had legitimately gone on a journey with my friends, and there was stories to be told because of that. Whenever we were walking through the forest, it didn't feel miserable. It felt fun because we were trying to survive, and we were talking to each other the entire time, and it was probably some of the most fun I've ever had on a game. We were all working together for the same goal, but different aspects. I was a carpenter, so I was building our base, cutting down trees, working on my skills. Sheepman was a fisher, so he was supplying us with food and learning how to throw net traps and furrow for worms and use his foraging tools. I'm not quite sure what Jenkins contributed, but I will figure that out later. If you haven't played Project Zomboid yet, go play it with friends or solo. It will immerse you and enthrall you with just how deep this world that the Indie Stone has built actually is. And after finishing this video, I want to go play the game myself again and give it another try. So go do yourself a favor and play this game. I'm going to go start my journey playing as Hugh Janus.